Hey everybody, what's up? Friday night. Yeah. Market was down today. All three averages were down. I don't think it's a big deal. Next week we're coming into some big flows by the end of the week. So I think we're going to see new highs across the board. Yeah, the flows are still very, very strong. There's some talk now that I see being reported about the House now trying to hammer out some kind of a spending bill, which will include about 2 to 3 trillion in cuts over a 10-year period. So we'll see how that plays out, but that's going to be balanced out by tax reduction, tax cuts. So spending cuts plus tax cuts. And the thing you got to remember, first of all, is that tax cuts are the fiscal equivalent of spending increases, right? Because tax cuts essentially puts money in your pocket or allows you to hold money in your pocket as opposed to taking it away. And spending increases, that does the same thing. It puts money in your pocket. So one basically cancels out the other. Depending on the magnitude, we don't know if it's going to be a 1-to-1 equivalent. But what does happen usually, and at least from what I have seen in the reporting on the spending cuts, these spending cuts are very regressive. In other words, they're going to mainly hit lower income strata. So I'm not going to comment about what that's going to do socially, like how's society going to look when you cut support to the lower income strata, but actually then you add support to the middle and upper income. I think you can figure that out for yourself. I'm an economist, and I'm trying here to provide information or the outlook on the economic scenario and as it pertains to financial markets. That's, we invest and we trade in those things. I'm trying to provide information so that you can make money. Somebody asked me, it looks so far, and there's no numbers out there yet. This 2 to 3 trillion is what's being reported now, kind of like inside scoop from some publications or whatever, that this is what the House is working on. So we'll see. So big tax cuts combined with big spending cuts. So I'm not sure, if that happens on the spending cut side, if that's going to have any sort of a material impact or negative impact on financial markets, on the stock market, because again, you're directing flows to middle and upper income strata households, and they're primarily the ones that invest in the stock market anyway. You don't have poor people investing in the stock market. So I don't know if it's going to make much difference, but we'll get to that analysis when it's time. I mean, when we have the actual numbers and when we have the actual breakdown, we'll get to that analysis. I was asked a question, a couple of things. I was asked a question like, Mike, aren't you worried that if there's going to be rate cuts, this pertains to rate cuts, which I have been saying that I think the whole inflation boogeyman, I don't think it's going to play out like that, but that's my view right now. And somebody said, well, aren't you concerned that rate cuts are going to siphon off interest income transfers into the economy? So first of all, interest income transfers are just one form of income transfers. Okay, you got a lot, the government's spending 7 trillion plus annually. Interest income transfers, while big, we're not talking about a gigantic reduction or eliminating completely those interest income transfers. At best, we're talking about a modest decline year over year in interest income transfers, and a whole bunch of other things might be going up, or there might be tax cuts, which again are the same thing fiscally. Tax cuts are the same thing fiscally as spending increases. I remember when I used to work at Fox News, Fox Business, I was on a panel one day with some economist, idiot from George Mason University. And I think what they teach over there, like most economics departments in the United States, with the exception of maybe a handful that don't teach the standard neoclassical bullshit, economics. When I made that comment, the guy fucking went ballistic. He was like, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Yeah, it is. Tax cuts are the fiscal equivalent of spending increases. They just go to a different strata. That's all. Or depending on who it's directed to, but usually you see tax cuts directed towards the upper middle, or, the middle if you're lucky, or the very wealthy, all right? And tax cuts to lower income, that really doesn't even exist, because lower income, they usually don't owe any taxes. They're not making enough money. Or if they do own taxes, they're either getting a refund, or the tax cut is like negligible. It's not going to make a difference in their standard of living, okay? So this guy was freaking out. But anyway, I said, the answer to that question, am I going to be worried? I'm never worried, because it doesn't matter to me what the policies are, personally. I mean, it might matter to me, in a non-economic sense, like if I think about society and what it's going to look like. Like, it bothers me when there's millions and millions of people who are hurting financially, and just like, I don't think that makes for a healthy society, but that's a whole separate discussion. It doesn't bother me, whatever policy is there. I don't care whether it's tax cuts for the rich, whether it's spending cuts, regressive spend. I don't care, because I have the knowledge to come up with a strategy to take advantage of that. So I don't get all worried like, oh, they're going to cut this or they're going to cut that. What do you think about this? They're going to give tax cuts to the rich. They're going to cut Medicaid to the poor. I mean, as an investor and as somebody here who's trying to teach and impart, and I've spent many, many videos where I said, don't be a victim, okay? And don't whine. I understand that maybe you're not in a position to offset everything that happens. None of us are, really. But like, at least do something. It's important that you do something for yourself. The stock market we are very, very, very lucky to live in a country like this, where we have all these means at our disposal, available to us, an abundance of things. The stock market is the most incredible, democratic, wealth-creating mechanism that there is. And you can use it in any scenario. I keep trying to tell you guys that. But all the comments, inflation, and I can't buy eggs, and this and that, and the dollar doesn't buy what it used to buy, and debasement, and blah, blah, everything's so tough. I don't want to hear it, okay? Because you choose not to have knowledge. You choose to stay in that victim mentality, where, it's rigged. It's rigged. The little guy doesn't have a chance. I don't care about what the policies are, because I know how to take advantage of it. And it's not because I'm some freaking genius or anything like that. It's just because that's an understanding. It's just understanding. It's knowledge. Okay? So that's number one. Then another guy texted me today and he said, Mike, what do you think about the bond market crisis in the UK? And I said, like, what crisis are you talking about? That UK gilts, they went down in price? I mean, why, and he said, did you see that the market was disciplined by the bond market was disciplined or something like that. It was like, like taught a lesson because the government was not engaging in fiscal discipline. Fiscal discipline. And I'm like, what does fiscal discipline mean? Does it mean, and remember now we're talking about a country, the UK, which has its own currency. It's a currency issuer. All of its debts are denominated in its own currency, the British pound. So I'm like, do you mean discipline in not supplying an adequate amount of the currency so that the people can pay their taxes and net save? Do you call that discipline? I call that stupidity. That is like forcing the system into insolvency. Like if you're a country or if you're a state or something and you impose taxes that you, by law, by force of prison actually, that you say you can only pay this liability. We impose this on everybody. And you can only pay this liability that we impose, okay, by diktat, okay, by force. You can only pay this in our own money. And then you say, as the issuer, we're not going to give you enough of that money to pay the taxes. And then you say, that's fiscal discipline? That's that's national suicide, okay? That is intentionally out of sheer stupidity or dogma trying to fuck over your people because you got a group of idiots at the top who don't even understand their own monetary system. Don't talk to me about fiscal discipline and then, try to say it's about not spending. Don't talk to me about that because you don't know what the hell you're talking about. Because if I'm living somewhere in a society with an overarching authority over me that imposes not just laws and regulations, but the threat of imprisonment, and says, you have to pay this in our money, and then doesn't provide that money in some way or some form, then everybody's going to prison, okay? That is not fiscal discipline. That is fiscal, national, fucking stupid suicide. That's what that is, okay? Now, all of you think that's some kind of fiscal discipline. We have all these idiots in the House, led by this guy, Chip Roy, who is he's like an anti-MAGA guy. He's against Trump. Trump wants to do away with the debt ceiling, and that's a very, very smart thing because it's an anachronism, and we shouldn't be having that. But this guy, who's leading the charge of these 2 to 3 trillion. And again, I don't care if they cut 2 to 3 trillion. As a matter of fact, I did a couple of videos where I said, I have a dark side. I want them to go ahead with their dogma and their false mythology and their stupidity and do these cuts because they think it's so freaking good. And I want them to see what the consequences of this are going to be. I want them to experience it. I'm not going to be affected. Maybe I will be, but I'll also be able to make some money out of it. Okay? And so will my people, so will my subscribers. But don't come around talking about fiscal discipline when basically what you're advocating for is that in a system where there's a risk of going to jail, if you don't pay a tax, which the state imposes on you, and the state says which can only be paid in its own money, and then does not provide that money to pay, then that is not discipline. That is stupidity beyond belief. That is destroying the fabric, not just of the economy of your country, destroying the fabric of your society out of sheer fucking stupidity. That's what that is. So I don't want to hear this shit about fiscal discipline when you don't know what you're talking about, okay? That's fiscal undiscipline. That's fiscal idiocy. So we'll see what happens, but I just wanted to make that point. Like going back to the so-called crisis in the bond market in the UK, what caused that decline? It was, again, this ridiculous, idiotic signaling by the Bank of England to the marketplace that we're going to have to raise interest rates to fight inflation. The same shit that was going on here in the United States with the Fed, okay? So, of course, the bond market is going to go down as a result of that ridiculous, stupid signaling by the central bank. If you have central bankers who are fixated in a flawed and wrong understanding of monetarism that is constantly applied, don't you think outcomes are going to be like bad? Of course they're going to be bad. Like I always say, if you have a disease in the body and you don't eradicate the disease, you will kill the body. That's what's happening. There's no crisis in the UK market. You have a bunch of idiots at the central bank, just like here. And by the way, Trump wants interest rates down. And Trump said in a press conference in the Oval Office yesterday, he was asked about Powell's, policies on interest rates. And Trump said, I know more about that than Powell. And he's right. Trump is right. Higher interest rates don't squash inflation. They raise the general price level. And just like these idiots at the Bank of England, they caused the gilt market to go down because they communicated this stupid idea, which is wrong, to the market. And the market reacted. What do you expect? That is one of the tools of central banks, is to manipulate what we call the reaction function of investors. Well, they manipulated it all right. And it wasn't a reaction in the bond market to like impose some discipline on the fiscal authority because there was no fiscal discipline. It's bullshit. It was this signaling by the stupid central bank that they were going to have to raise interest rates. Anyway, I've given you all the examples. Argentina raised interest rates. Turkey raised interest rates. All these other countries that raised interest rates. Inflation skyrocketed. The currency collapsed. Japan, which didn't raise interest rates through the whole entire COVID crisis, had practically zero inflation. Now they're raising interest rates, even though it's a modest 0.5%. And guess what? Inflation is going up. You would think these guys would open up their freaking eyes and take a look at what's going on. They're fucking blind to it. They're not. Idiots. Anyway, that's it for today, folks. Friday night. I'm going to make myself a nice big steak. Yeah. I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening, day, whatever. Don't forget, please like and subscribe. I'm going for 10,000 subscribers on the channel. I still got a pretty long way to go. But anyway, thank you, everybody who has subscribed. And don't forget to go to my website, pitbulleconomics.com. Sign up for a 30-day free trial to MMT Trader. See you. Bye.